Hi there, I'm Helen. As Molly said, I'm the lead practitioner for the Sleep charity. I've worked with children with additional needs for nearly 40 years now. I ran our portage service in the north of Worcestershire for 12 years, and I've been family liaison officer at a special school before I became the lead practitioner here. So lots and lots of experience. As Molly said, today we're talking about routines and why they're important, especially so for our neurodivergent cohort. Now I'm going to share my screen, which means I disappear, but don't worry, that's no bad thing. I will come back as soon as we've finished, where we can ask questions and meet each other and say hello. So I'll start if that's okay, Molly. Okay, so let's just define what we actually mean by a routine. So it's the practice of doing the same things in a regular order at the same time every single day. And it's a powerful practice that significantly contributes to overall well-being. I'm just going to introduce a little boy I worked with called George. He was 5 years old. Now his evening routines, they lasted for hours, and they were dreaded by the parents. It was not a pleasant time at all. He would have meltdowns, he would physically attack his family, he'd be extremely demand avoidant, he would not settle, and the parents were absolutely exhausted. So I'm just going to leave that with you, and we're going to park it here, and we'll come back to George in a little while. Now, what happens when we do these same things at the same time every day over time? What we get is an overall improvement in sleep quality. We start to regulate those sleep patterns. Our circadian rhythm thrives on regularity. The more regular practice it gets, the stronger the rhythm becomes. And the more the body anticipates sleep, the easier it actually becomes to drop off and stay asleep. So it's all in that anticipation. And over time, this results in better quality and more restless sleep. And what it also does is, because the brain is preparing and starting to reduce that arousal level, we start to avoid that overtired, hyperactive stage of sleep. So as we get used to implementing it, the signals are sent to the brain, so it's time to calm down and relax. And we have time to decompress. We have time to talk. So I'm just going to go back on. We have time to talk, and that helps wind down our children. It gives them time to process what's happened in the day and let go of it. And because they've already gone through this process, they go to bed calmer, because they no longer need to offload. You know, that time when you get them into bed, you're just about to say goodbye, and you're stood there for them, and they go, oh, Mum, Mum. So we all know how often they call us back the minute we've settled them and empty their head. And that's because this is often the only time that we as parents and carers are actually there still and 100% available for them. So they grab every opportunity they can. And allowing a set time to do this processing before they're getting ready for bed means that they're not holding on to their worries. They've already shared them. And hopefully we've made some plans to deal with those worries and review them. The associations we get, which are the things that we need in order to go to sleep. So it might be a parrot lying next to us. It might be an audio tape going on. If you're already relaxed and ready for bed, we're more likely to be able to reduce those associations, so it's easier to drop off. And when they wake in the night, they're not having to have things put back in place in order to drop back off again. And like I said, the shorter the time is spent in bed awake, the less time there is to get over those. And starting that routine, like I said, when they're very naturally sleepy, can help over tiredness, that juggling a jelly toddler. No child who hits that hyperactive state is ready for sleep. Those of you who tried to put overtired toddlers to bed can probably remember that feeling of dread and stress that comes with it. And with good timing, and we can talk about timing in a minute, this can be avoided So the child becomes naturally sleepy at the right time in a calm environment, in a calm manner, in a place where they can drop off naturally. So better health all around. Let's pan out from just looking at the child's sleep. We know that a full night's sleep improves our physical, our brain, and our mental health. Our cognitive functions can improve, they can become sharper, thus optimizing academic performance. Our immune systems repair, and our hormones are released when we sleep, so we have the right levels of hormones coursing through our bodies. Stress levels become lowered and we develop higher resilience. Life is given a perspective. That old adage of sleep on it, it won't seem so bad in the morning, is actually based on facts. We draw things from past experiences, we pull things out of our filing cabinets, and our brain kind of works things out for us when we're asleep. So sleeping on it really is a really good thing to do if you're overly concerned about something. Lots of children struggle with transitions. Having a set routine with or without visuals, it's, you know, you have to work with the needs of your child. We can also use objects and reference, means that it's predictable and we know that they like this. We know that they want to know what's coming next. It can be depended upon. It's reliable, it's trustworthy. And that's absolutely fine. If our children get really hooked on routines, it's not a problem because this one is tailor-made for them and it's good for them to rely on it. It's when they're reliant on routines that don't work and we've got to change them that difficulties start to sort of kick in. And I'm going to mention a little bit more about preparing for a routine in a minute. We get improved family life. Now, families often tell us that once they've got into it and it's become a normal part of their routine, that wind down is actually one of the nicest parts of the day. Everything's calm. Parents are present for their children in a non-distracted way. You know, you're doing stuff with them. You're not loading the dishwasher or just rushing to put a load of washing on. It breaks that vicious cycle of dreading bedtime because it's a more positive time. It's planned. The things that we do, we know the children like. Calmer evenings mean less demand avoidant behaviour. If our children are stressed, we know that that demand avoidance is going to heighten. And it's going to give them skills for life. You know, we're setting them up for their future. We often suggest parents put something in a bedtime box for themselves to do, because having an adult doing an activity alongside a child provides them with a good role model. It provides screen-free time. It provides a habit that can be carried on into adulthood. We often we see children become much better regulated. So a well-rested child is more likely to be able to manage their emotions more appropriately the next day. They're more likely to have the capacity for debate and conversation, if that's in their skill set, rather than resorting to that dysregulated tantrum or that demand avoidant response. And the same goes for us too, as parents and carers. If we're more well rested, we're more regulated and we're less likely to fly off the handle. We're more likely to be able to put our behaviour management practices into place so we can be proactive rather than reactive. A child who goes to bed early enough to get the right amount of sleep, and that's different for every child, is going to be easier to wake in the mornings. And very often when we've stretched that sleep need, they start to wake naturally if those sleep needs are being met. And this makes not only evenings calmer, but mornings as well. Anxiety around being late for school are removed because the goodbye at the gate is more relaxed. It's much more friendly between you rather than rushed and stressful and racing to get through before the bell goes. So the start to the school day actually becomes positive. And what we find is this reflects throughout the school day as well. and ask your teachers the difference between a child who's been rushed to school and late and what their behaviour is like and how long it takes them to decompress and re-regulate compared to a child who can get through the school gate on time. And us as parents, I mean, I have 4 children, you know, you can just feel that stress level rising just thinking about it, can't you? So we start to see school attendance improve as a result of this, and a lot of children on my caseload are non-school attenders. A lot of that is due to high levels of anxiety. Some of them go to sleep so late, like 3, 4 in the morning, that they're impossible to wake in time for school. They become too dysregulated to cope. And what I've found is that parents often have to give up work or take a sidestep at work because it's just too much to keep going in a job. And this puts huge financial strains on families. I think when I say sleep deprivation can have a financial impact on a family, people say, oh, that's a little bit over the top, but it isn't. In one room alone, when I was doing some training in London, I had one mum who was a 999 call operator, and she was on her last warning because she wasn't working at the level that she needed to. The other one was a GP, and she was taking annual leave to get some sleep just so she didn't write the wrong levels of prescriptions out. Now, if those 2 ladies had lost their jobs, that would have had a major impact on those families' finances. So it really is significantly serious. And so the last one on this slide is that children begin to develop interoceptive awareness with a regular routine input. Parents report that actually once this starts getting established, they start to tell the parents, I feel tired or I feel sleepy, you know, whatever descriptor they can use, they start to understand the signals that the brain is sending them. And some, please don't put your hat on this one, but some actually ask to go to bed themselves now without being prompted. Let's go back to George. Remember, we met him. We put a routine in place. We gave him control of his routine. He liked to turn the telly off and tell the family it was unavailable. He liked to get his bedtime box out, but he did the same thing at the same time every night, and he went to bed calm. Once he actually got into bed, though, he started to cry, but he was able to use words instead of emotions and having meltdowns to explain what was going on with him. And he actually said to his mum, "Mummy, I'm so calm, but I can't sleep." So now he was actually able to recognize those interoceptive skills and have a conversation. And actually, he did need melatonin, but we have the evidence to take to the paediatricians to say, this is what we've done, this is the improvement it's had. However, he still can't drop off. But that interoceptive awareness doesn't happen if they're in that state of fight or flight, which they are when they're stressed and anxious. So this is what a typical routine would look like. Now, everybody's will look something like this, but on top of this, there's all the generic stuff that we need to do. There's all the stuff that we've talked about in previous webinars about why your child isn't sleeping. You know, we're looking at those sensory needs, bedroom environment, the diet that they have during the day. There's hundreds of things that we need to do. But on top of those strategies, we will have a rough routine. Now, remember, that the timings are very different. We work backwards an hour from when your child is naturally asleep. Now, if they're not asleep till midnight, we're going to start at 11 and we will slowly bring it backwards to a more age-appropriate time. But let's assume that your child's asleep by 7 o'clock. We're going to start your routine at about 6 o'clock. So we start away from the bedroom. So I always say to a family, within your house rules, up until 6, they can do whatever they want. If they want to be sitting in their room watching telly, that's not a problem. But at 6 o'clock, we come into the lounge. We make the bedroom ready for sleep. So we make sure it's all nice and dark. There's a nice side light on, ready to go up. The bed's nice and ready to get into, so it's all relaxing and ready. So we come into the lounge and we lower lighting levels, and that tells our brain that the sun has gone down. It's time to start making melatonin, which is our sleepy hormone. We turn screens off. Potentially, it can inhibit production of melatonin. It also raises brain arousal levels, and we need to lower those. And there's also that negative impact of having a screen taken away from you and having to go to bed. So we have that hour's break from the screen before going to sleep for all of those reasons. Play some relaxing music in the background. Delta wave has been studied by a company called Marconi Union, and they did some amazing research and found that it can lower anxiety by about 65% in those that it works for. So it's a really great style of music to have in the background. It's played at delta wave frequency, which is deep sleep frequency, and the brain starts to mirror that. So while that's going on in the background, having a little sleepy snack, and Google sleepy foods, you'll find loads there. There's usually something for even the fussiest of eaters. And doing some hand-eye coordination activities. So we're talking things like threading, modelling clay, Play-Doh, putting pieces of pasta into a Pringles tin, spaghetti into a colander, pegs onto a string, any kind of threading activity, sequin art. If you're struggling, ask your teachers, what do they like doing hand-eye coordination wise, and they'll be able to give you a developmentally appropriate activity so that you can have a couple of things in your box, and I'll talk about a bedtime box in a minute. Maybe lighting a scent, and these are the scents that make your children go ooh rather than ooh. That might be your morning scent. So something that they like and you think it's going to relax them. And over time, by association, that becomes part of the signals that the brain receives. And the more signals we can send the brain, which is why we do the music, the hand-eye coordination, the scents, the lighting. We're doing that sort of holistic approach to wind down. About half an hour later, so we're not doing activities with them for an hour, and you might need a sensory gap in between activities. You might actually have a sensory wind down if that's what your children need. But if it's appropriate, we go up for a bath about half an hour before sleep. Now, if they hate a bath and it's a screaming time, or nail clipping, hair brushing, teeth brushing, do them at a different time. Don't include them in your bedtime routine, because you're just going to undo all that lovely work you've just done for half an hour. You could put a tumble dryer on with a dressing gown in, or a towel, or put it on a radiator and just wrap them in something warm for 5 minutes. We're just looking at raising the body temperature slightly before they go upstairs. And then again, teeth, if it's appropriate, pajamas, into bed. Now, if you've got a demand avoidant child and that word bed triggers meltdowns, we take the word bed away. So I always tell parents to set an alarm. Oh, that's the bedtime box alarm, or the quiet alarm. Oh, that's our snack alarm. Oh, that's our bath alarm. Oh, that's my story alarm. I wonder what story we'll read tonight. And stories happen in bed. So we're not asking them to get into bed. We're waiting for them to get into bed so we can start our story, which is another really positive time. Or massage, or hair stroking. Not every child can sit and listen to a story. So again, we want to keep that part of bedtime positive. And then whatever strategy we've chosen to help your child go to sleep, whether it's gradual retreat or rapid return, you'll put that into place and keep that going throughout the night. And also remember that mornings, we have to get them up at the same time every morning, because we're resetting that body clock for them. And that's at weekends as well. So teenagers absolutely hate me. Okay. So the routine, how that child falls asleep needs to be maintained throughout the night. Remember, any changes that happen in that bedroom are likely to wake the child at the top of a sleep cycle. So make sure that the landing light outside is turned off before they go to sleep. If you turn it off when you come to bed, just have a little look around the room and make sure everything is consistent. Make sure that all their sensory needs are being met in the bed and in the room. So if they're sound sensitive or they've got proprioceptive needs, and again, speak to your OTs in the schools, they'll be able to help you with that. And the most beautiful looking routine is only useful if it's aligned to your child's circadian rhythm. So like I said, initially work backwards an hour from when your child is going to sleep. Only when that's established can we think about changing it. And we change it slowly over time at a rate that their circadian rhythm can cope with until it's more age appropriate. Some children can manage 15 minutes every few nights. Others, we have to work in 5-minute increments. And what this does, it removes the fight of going to bed. The routine sets that association of getting into bed and falling asleep. It takes away sometimes hours of fighting and arguing and messing around. You know, if you're putting them to bed at 7 and they're not asleep till 10, that's a 3-hour battle. Let's remove that. Let's work to when they're sleepy. Okay. So, some children struggle with transitions, changing from one activity to another, so we need to plan those. So plan for removing screen time and things like that. So if you've got children who are reliant on screens, having an egg timer, they can ignore that, and we've effectively just taking that screen off them because they've forgotten the egg timer is going. But having a piece of music on, for example, means that that's always peripheral. They can hear it. They know how long that piece of music lasts. So the same piece of music all night long can help them, sorry, not all night long. So maybe have a piece of music for 15 minutes, the same piece of music every day. So they learn how long that piece of music is. They know roughly when it's halfway. It means that they're planning to, they can finish what they're doing. They've got processing time to know it's coming to an end. There are also some strategies out there where you just go and join them on their screen and you just sit with them for a minute or two, and then you start to ask them a question. And once they start answering your questions about what's going on, they're coming out of that zone, and actually it's quite safe to remove that screen at that time. So there are lots of different strategies out there for screen removal, but we have to do that before we put the routine in place in a way that helps them come off it calmly. Sleep needs change, and sometimes things don't work as well as they used to. So they may have grown up. You know, you might say, oh, they were asleep by 8 this time last year, and now it's not, you know, they're not asleep until 8:30. Just move it forwards by 15 minutes, just because their sleep needs might have changed. So this won't work all the time forever. We have to adapt it as they develop. Now, we had a little chat about bedtime boxes, so I'm just going to elaborate on what that means. So they're developmentally appropriate, so it doesn't matter how old your child is, what can they manage? So putting, for example, a cutting activity in for a child who's got dyspraxia is just not going to be relaxing or enjoyable. It's going to be a physical challenge, and it's going to cause huge amounts of frustration. So lots of our children don't or can't manage age-specific activities. So suit that level of development and their language capacity. Don't forget that as well. We need to make sure it meets your child's interests. So put in a reading book for a child who hates reading isn't going to help them transition from their screen to the box. So having something in there, so it's something to look forward to. You're going to have that compliance from going from screen to box. Having it just for bedtime. Don't let this box be available during the day. And it means they're going to be more interested, and if it's freely available during the day, it's going to hold no special meaning. Review, again, this is becoming a bit of a theme. Change the contents, keep it interesting, not every night, but maybe every couple of weeks. Think, I'll change that jigsaw puzzle, they've done that a few times, or actually that catalogue we've been cutting up is looking a bit tatty, I'm going to go to the travel agent and get a Disney one, or one with beaches on. Argos doesn't exist anymore with our catalogues, does it? You used to be able to come away with a lovely Argos catalogue, but you can't do that anymore. But travel agents still have lots that you could cut up. Let them help choose the content, so involve them. They are more likely to engage in what's in them if they've been a stakeholder in setting it up. The most important is don't spend lots of money. There is no need for expensive toys. Pound shops, charity shops, car boots. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money. You've probably got loads of stuff already. Pinterest is absolutely brilliant for ideas. And again, put your age, your child's developmental ability in, and what kind of things they like, and you will just get so many ideas. I don't often tell parents to go to the internet, but on things like this, I absolutely do. And preparation means success. Scrabbling around for something to do every night, if you haven't got a box ready, just kind of sets you up for failure. Having that box ready with things in there means you're literally lowering your lights, opening the box, and your routine started. It is so much less stressful. And a box won't suit every child. Like I said, you might have to be having some sort of sensory wind down for some children, and your OT's knowledge is invaluable here. So a routine will put you back in control as a parent. Quite often parents will say to me, oh, I can't do that, they'll kick off. But actually, it's often a time of chaos anyway, bedtime, isn't it? It's a time of confrontation and stress, and having a set routine to follow does put you back in control. That initial change from no routine into implementation can be tricky. There's always a transition, but it's usually only a few days before the child starts asking for the bedtime box, for their snack, or for the TVs to be turned off. And it wasn't as hard as I thought is a comment that I hear over and over. Having the routine alongside the education, the supports and the scripts that we give parents, when you're implementing it, you use a more confident tone of voice because we've told you why you're doing it, so you understand and you get it. We've told you how we're going to support you, so you know you can come back to us. There's also an element of accountability if you know someone's going to come back and support you. We've practiced some of the scripts and some of the conversation starters for you, so your tone of voice is confident because you know what you're doing. Your body posture is more authoritative. The language you're using is better suited to avoid confrontation, and we would have practiced that with you. So it becomes almost more teacher-like, and the children actually respond well to this. And like I said, this phrase is something we hear more and more often, but it does take preparation in order to accomplish this. Now, we live in a generation where parents want to be their children's friends rather than their parents sometimes. And parents will do anything to avoid a tantrum sometimes, and I get that, I really do. However, unless we make a change, nothing is going to change. And just having that script ready really can help you make changes without those tantrums. And sometimes we have to ride through those, but as long as you're consistent, you can hold them through the tantrums, that's absolutely fine, but we're not going to give them what they want at the end of it, which is the old routine back. And practicing phrases that suit the personalities in the house, discussing possible scenarios, going over strategies in detail, planning it, thinking about it, picturing what is this going to look like when it goes well, just gives you that confidence to put it into place. So patterns and predictability are the friends of our children. They like to know what's expected, so they respond once that routine is established. And it's a much better use of your time at night time. We are giving our children positive vibes. Sending a child to bed is often perceived by the child as a punishment, and we're turning this around. So bedtime and the run up to bedtime is now a positive time for everybody. It's something to look forward to instead of dreading. It's a time for praise rather than shouting. It's a time to share rather than to feel isolated. Children like ceilings, they like those boundaries, and despite rebelling against them, they need to know that those parameters are in place. And that's exactly why they keep testing them. It's actually psychologically reassuring to have them in place. So to test and find it's moved can actually be unsettling. I call them paper ceilings. So they'll test at level 1 and you give in. So they think, right, okay, level 1 is where I pitch it to get what I need or what I want. And then when we think, right, no, I'm going to be stricter today. So you put a new ceiling in place. So they test it at level 1. Oh, that hasn't moved. I wonder what level 2 does. Ah, there it is. She's given in at level 2. So that's where I test it. So every time you put a new ceiling in place, they up the ante. So parents will say, not only is this not working, it's got worse. And that's because we've got these paper ceiling situations going on. So when we're putting a routine in place, we're actually going to start with concrete ceilings. And they will test, oh, 2 doesn't work anymore, let's try 3. Well, 3 is not working, let's try 5, let's try 10. And eventually they'll realise that that ceiling is made out of concrete. And this is what parents struggle with, because you will get horrendous behaviour. That first week or 2 can be, I call it not pretty, but you put your own picture onto it. It is a struggle, it's really difficult. But once they get used to the fact that you're not going to give in, you are going to be predictable, you are going to be trustworthy, you are going to have everything in place, it comes down, and then they start to rely on it because it's actually reassuring for them. And that's why when we work with families, we do educate on that psycho analysis part of it, because it is so important to realise that, yes, it looks like it's getting worse and it's not working, but this is that transition. Let's get through that transition and things will become much better. And this approach is sustainable. Life happens. You will go on holiday. Christmas will happen. People will visit. Friends will come over. They will have sleepovers. But it's easier to get things back on track if you relax things unintentionally or just for a short period of time. And like I said before, parents often tell us this becomes their favourite part of the day. It's calm. Children start to open up more because their parents are there 100% and focused on them. And remember that sleep needs change. Parents, excuse me, parents sometimes need reminding, like I said. As children get older, they need less sleep. And as their children enter their teen years, their needs often become the same as the parents. And sharing their evenings is a transition that parents actually have to get used to eventually. And importantly, mornings are often forgotten about in a routine. We did touch on it when we looked at the routine, but setting that consistent get-up time is just as important as the evening times. Don't allow lie-ins on a weekend or on summer holidays. They just eat into that sleep drive for the night to come and push the routine later. Anxiety issues need to be addressed away from the bedtime hour. So make a time in the evening to do this, maybe after dinner. Once or twice a week is often sufficient. Set some strategies for their worries. Again, if your child's got the capacity to do this, and review them regularly. Having trust in their adult to do this with them and for them means that when they hand you a worry as their head hits that pillow, as you know they will, what you do then is you just hold on to it. You take it off them, but you don't engage in it. So that's really important. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. I'll look after that worry for you. So they've got it out. They haven't got to worry about remembering it. They don't have to go over and over and over it, because they know tomorrow you will set aside that time to talk about it. And this is just a lovely quote from a child who we worked with. And he said, nobody liked me. Nobody wanted to play with me because I was a butterfly locked in a box with broken wings. But someone's now opened the box and my wings are mended. And what a lovely, astute comment for a child to have. So I'm going to come back to you now and we can open up some questions.
Yeah, that was absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Helen. So many great tips and strategies in there. We've had a few questions coming in, so we'll just try and get through as many as we can.
Okay.
So the first one is, my 11-year-old daughter needs me to lie with her every night to get her to sleep.
Yeah.
She likes to cuddle and place her hand on my shoulder or waist, skin on skin. How can I try and get her to sleep by herself? She's on melatonin, 2 to 4 milligrams, 3 nights a week.
Okay. I'm assuming she does fall asleep quite easily with you next to her. Such a common strategy to get our children to sleep. Like I said, I had 4 children. My son was about 10 when he came into bed for the last time with me. So absolutely no criticism or judgment here. It's an easy way to get our children to sleep. There's lots that she's getting from that. You've got skin on skin contact, so there's a sensory need being met there. There's an attachment need being met. There's also proprioceptive needs being met because she's got the heat and the weight and the pressure of your body next to her. So when you look at what she's getting from it, it's not just mum lying next to her. There's a huge amount going on. So we have to swap those needs. And I would suggest that a gradual retreat would work better for you. But initially, I would put some blankets under her fitted sheet, roll them up lengthways, put them under her fitted sheet and scoot them up right next to her, almost so she's in a cocoon. Maybe a V-shaped pillow, possibly some compression. Now, if you Google compression sensory bed sheets, you'll get a massive line of examples. You can get one for under 20 quid. And they're like a lycra sock that goes over your mattress. And it just gives them physical feedback from the top of the body that they're getting from the blankets at the side and the mattress at the bottom. And they can be really, really useful. And that will give her that sort of physical feedback that she's getting from your body. And I would suggest that for the next week, you maybe sit on the bed with your legs up and just put your hand on her. Again, she's going to remember the paper ceiling. She's going to try everything she can to get you to lie down next to her because that's what she wants. That's what her brain has been trained that it needs to do in order to go to sleep. She doesn't need it. She's just been trained to need it. So we just have to detrain her brain. And it takes 2 to 6 weeks to break a habit. So when she's got used to you sitting on the bed rather than lying down next to her, then you're going to sit on the bed with your feet on the floor and maybe just have your hand on her. No stroking, no touching. We have to start removing that. And then you're just going to sit on the bed with no touch. And when she's got used to that, you're going to sit on a chair next to the bed. But remember, she will wake in the night because you will be an association. So she will need you back at night. So when she wakes in the night, you just have to sit in the same place that you were as she was dropping off. And as time goes by, that chair will move closer to the door until you can move out of the door. But look at the sensory need she's getting at the same time. Also, make sure that that bedroom environment is consistent. So if she falls asleep with anything on a timer, like an audiobook, we either leave that on all night long or we turn it off before she's asleep. Same with the starlight show on the ceiling, same with the landing light outside. So just have a look through the room as well and make sure that you're not the only association that might be present, because if we start removing you, there might be other things that we also need to look at.
Yeah, that was a great answer. Thank you, Helen. This one, we've got another one now. This is quite a tricky one. Our one with quad cerebral palsy and good understanding has not allowed us a night's sleep in 7 years. We have tried everything, but spasms wake him usually every hour. And if he can't feel one of us near him, he becomes very distressed. And if he wakes totally, he doesn't go back to sleep. He's still nursed to sleep, as just lying down and being with him doesn't work. He's bathed and storied, nursed at the same time every day, but it often takes hours before he goes to sleep. Help.
Okay. So the spasms are not a behavioural sleep problem. And that's the difficulty, because it's not, that's a medical reason for not sleeping. So unless he's on medication to help with those, there's not a lot I can do with that. However, it goes back to the last question. It's what he's getting from having you next to him if you have to lie down with him. So replacing those sensory needs that he's getting When he's spasming, going back to where you were. So it might be that you're just sitting next to the bed initially, but removing that reliance on you to help him get to sleep. So again, his brain has been trained in a certain way to drop off. So it's, you know, it's how we remove that reliance on you, and that's the key. So making sure those sensory needs are being met, make sure his room is consistent, and then when he does wake, when he spasms, you'll be much more able to settle him. But they're easy words. It's a long process to go from lying down with your child to not sleeping with your child at all. This is not overnight. This can take a few months sometimes, but with patience, having a plan, sticking to the plan, and allowing him to adapt to each new position before you move to the next one, you will get there. But it does take time, and it's not easy. But it's about looking for that long-term gain rather than a quick overnight fix, because I can promise you they don't exist. And anyone who promises you that they do exist are setting you up to fail. So it's planning for it, working very slowly, removing yourself very slowly. It might be that you lie next to him but you don't touch him, and then we start sitting on the bed, putting our feet on the floor, moving to a chair very slowly. But make sure those sensory needs are being met in bed to replace the feeling of you being there.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Helen. The next question is, how much sleep should a 10-year-old have? We find later after school clubs which our son enjoys is negatively impacting sleep routine and regulation / cognitive function the following day.
Really? Okay. So an average 10-year-old should get about 9 3/4 hours sleep. But that is an average. Don't sort of set that as black and white. We have to think about the time that you are waking your children up for school in the morning. So if they have to be woken at 7 in the morning, what's round, let's just say 10 for maths. What's 10 hours? We're looking at them going to sleep at, what's the, 10, aren't we? 10 to, oh, help me out, Molly. So 10 hours sleep, and they're up at 7, that's asleep by 9. Yes. So if you can get them to sleep by 9 o'clock and they're easy to get up at 7, then they've met their sleep need. If there's still a struggle and they don't wake up easily till 7:15 or 7:30, then we need more sleep. So we kind of work backwards. So we extend the sleep further into the earlier evening until that they're starting to rouse themselves naturally. If you're having to wake your children up, then they're not getting enough sleep. That's kind of the black and white of it. So how much sleep does my child need always elicits a bit of a politician's answer, because I don't know how much your particular child needs, but we kind of gauge it by how easy they are to wake up in the morning. We do have some children who wake up really early because they're usually children on the spectrum or children with ADHD, and that's different. Those are sleep needs that aren't being met because of their neurodivergence, and we have to make sure that we're looking at all the other things we've discussed, those sensory needs, that bedroom environment, to make sure that their environment is meeting their needs so they can sleep as long as possible.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Helen. Next question is, I have 2 boys aged 3 and 6. Our 6-year-old has ADHD, anxiety of being left even in the daytime, and struggles with sleep and frequently waking in the night and early in the morning. I'm a single parent. How do you suggest trying to balance both their bedtime needs, as when I'm putting a 3-year-old to bed, the 6-year-old clings to me?
Yeah, I think I'm assuming this is mum. Is it mum who's asked? Don't want to assume.
Yeah, it doesn't say, to be honest.
Okay, I'm going to say mum. It might be dad, but apologies if it is. So mum and 6-year-old put the 3-year-old to bed. It becomes a joint effort, and the story can be read to both children. So include that 6-year-old in that 3-year-old's bedtime, and then when the 3-year-old's asleep, then you've got one-on-one time with a 6-year-old, and you can do the wind down. You can do a routine that's tailor-made for that particular child. The 3-year-old will be in the deep sleep by this time, so bath time and the story time for the 6-year-old isn't going to interrupt the 3-year-old. They're not going to wake up from a deep sleep. So I would separate the 2 bedtimes, because I think that will be easier. It doesn't sound easier, but it will be. So both of you put the 3-year-old to bed, and then the 6-year-old can have one-on-one time with mum. And I think as that becomes established, the 6-year-old will become less clingy because they know that one-on-one time is coming. So they might start to look through a book on their own rather than clinging to mum. So yeah, I think it's really tricky just to solve a sleep issue in a few minutes on here, but I would separate the 2. You can probably just have that extra half an hour with a 6-year-old afterwards to make a really unique wind down.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Helen. Next question is, any tips on dealing with nightmares, night terrors, and dissociative episodes at night? Brackets, hearing voices, sleepwalking, etc.
Yeah. So the dissociative terrors could be because the sleep isn't coming, and it's more of an awake sleep. But night terrors are deep sleep parasomnias. Night terrors, sleepwalking, sleep talking, these are deep sleep parasomnias. And we don't really know why they happen. We know that they're not psychologically damaging. There's absolutely no evidence, and there have been lots of longitudinal studies. We know that 1% will take them through to adulthood, so they do grow out of them. There's not much you can do. We're not paralysed in this stage of sleep where we are in our REM sleep. We tend to be paralysed then, but in our deep sleep, we're not. So we can be up and we can be walking, or we can be sitting up in bed. I had a friend who was convinced she was sleepwalking, and she went down to her kitchen the next morning and there were like 12 cups of tea that she'd made in her sleep. So you are functional when you are sleepwalking. If it's a sleep terror, it's really horrible to watch as a parent. They are in abject terror. They'll be hyperventilating, they'll be sweating, they'll be full of adrenaline. If you try and calm them, you run the risk of becoming part of that episode. So we suggest not waking them. So although it's not dangerous, what you're likely to do is introduce sleep anxiety, because why would I want to go to sleep if I woke up in this state in a place where I wasn't meant to be, and I'm in absolute abject terror. So we guide them back to bed if they're out of bed. We just have to watch over them. There is something you can do called scheduled wakening, which is effective 15 to 20% of the time. So again, it's not something you can hang your hat on, but it is worth trying. And parasomnias very often happen at the same time every night. So parents will say they're asleep by 8, and by 8:45, then that's when we know it starts. So we sort of say 15 to 20 minutes before they're going to wake up, we just go in and maybe bang into the bed a little or rattle a drawer, just to draw them through the sleep cycle slightly, just to shift them. So we're not waking them up properly, we're just partially arousing them. And you have to do that for at least 2 weeks, and sometimes that can shift them through that episode. Doesn't always work, but it is worth trying. But yeah, sadly, there's not much we can do about it. Referrals tend to only happen if the child is causing harm to themselves, they're harm to anyone else, or it's causing significant family disruption. But there's not a huge amount we can do about them, I'm sorry.
Oh, great. Thank you, Helen. Next question is, it says, thank you so much. This presentation was amazing. I'm really struggling with my 10-year-old daughter at bedtimes. This has been the situation for the last 6 years. I feel like I've tried everything. Is there any possibility of having one-to-one support with the charity? How does that work?
No, I'm afraid we are only commissioned in a few areas, and that's North Yorkshire, Alder Hey, and that's a medical referral, Bassett Law and Barnsley. So those are the only CCGs that commission us. However, we do have a helpline, a national helpline. So if you go onto our website, there's an information and support tab, and the helpline information is there. It's open 3 mornings, 2 evenings a week, so it's open quite often. If you can't get through, just keep trying. It just means they're on the phone with somebody else. and you can talk to a trained practitioner, and they can at least give you some strategies to help you move forward in your specific case. It's really difficult to do that here, and that's not what this is about, but our helpline, you can speak to someone about your specific case and they can give you some top tips. There's also loads of information on our website. We also have a foundation course which will give you the basic sleep hygiene information if you're interested in that. I don't think it costs too much money, but obviously we've also got the webinars that you've done with us, or we've done with you in the past. I don't know if those are still available, Molly.
Yeah, and we've got the podcast coming out
We have.
month. Yeah, so that'll be on our website as well. So thank you, Helen. The next question is, what about older teenagers? They're unlikely to follow the suggested routines, nor want a story, etc. How do you encourage sleep when removal of screens is likely to cause an outburst? And as you say, are unlikely to want to sleep at a reasonable hour or get up at set times?
Yeah, older teens tend to make melatonin later, so they genuinely, biologically have difficulty falling asleep at what we would deem as parents a suitable time. They don't need more sleep. They need the same kind of sleep that we do, but because their melatonin is produced later, so they're not tired until much later, they're going to bed later, so they're not ready to get up in the morning. So they do sleep in at the weekends because they're trying to get those sleep needs. The difficulty with teens is we have to get their engagement. We can't do to a teen. So some teens really want the support and they work really well with it. Others really struggle to put things into place. Again, we have to empower parents to be parents. And actually, for me, with mine, he's 18 now, but at 15, 16, all his stuff was on a timer and it went off at a certain time with the Wi-Fi, and I told him BT did it, nothing to do with me. So he used to have a meltdown, but they didn't go back on. So his screens weren't available after a certain time, and as a parent, that's what we have to put in place, and they do get used to it. But that's why doing something that suits them, and although we say no screens, just watching something is not, for a teen, that's not too bad. We could watch a movie. I'm not talking anything high intensity, maybe a series of some sort that's quite low key, just so that they're not having that huge input into the brain. I mean, when you look at what they're doing on a screen, the addictive parts of the brain light up. But that's not going to happen when you're just watching something quite boring on telly. So they can switch from one screen to another. It's not ideal, but it's better than having those meltdowns. But really, it's about taking control of what they're doing, warning them, playing that music, going and joining them and talking about what they're doing just to break that zone. And that's what we have to break. Giving them processing time, because they need that. They need to finish what they're doing. They need to say goodbye to who they're playing with. So it might be that you give them half an hour, but you make sure that half an hour is always in the back of their mind. An egg timer, in my opinion, just gets forgotten and it's just like turning it off again. So it's about getting their engagement, finding out what they're good at. So if they're sporty, we're going to repair injuries better if we sleep. We're going to be faster. Our reflexes are going to be better. If they're gamers, they're going to be able to react more quickly if they sleep better. So actually their gaming will be better if they get sleep. If they're academic, they'll be able to learn more, put things into long-term memory. So it's finding what they're good at and giving them a superpower, which is sleep, to help them with that. But teens are tricky. They are tricky.
Yeah, brilliant answer. Thank you, Helen. And the next question is from a professional. This is, I work with early years children and parents often struggle when the child wakes in the night and is wide awake. They just want to play and they do not understand why they can't go downstairs. Any suggestions for this?
Yeah, research has shown that children who get up early because they're allowed to. And I say that a bit tongue-in-cheek, we have to allow them sometimes because, just for an example, I have parents whose dads are long-distance lorry drivers and mum just says, I cannot let him go to work tired. I have to keep the children quiet. Everyone else gets disturbed, so I have to take them downstairs. I think looking at where they're sleeping, the bedroom environment, we have to look at why they're waking up. So are there associations? Are there environmental noises? Do we need to pipe some white noise into that bedroom because the noises have woken them? The second half of sleep is at level 2, and that's an environmentally aware stage of sleep. So if you have noises going on, they're going to wake you up. So white noise will block environmental noises out and they won't wake you up. Are those changes in environments happening? You know, is there something going on that wasn't there when they went to sleep? So has that landing light gone off? Has the audible tape gone off? How is their room a distraction? So if there are toys in the room, how do we make those unavailable throughout the night? Can the room just be for sleep only and have a corner of the lounge where their toys are, so that the bedroom is taken seriously as a place for sleep? Again, lots of information on our website if you want to go and look that up.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Helen. This is a question that I think our parents ask this one quite a lot. So my son has ADHD and always wakes up at 6 a.m. no matter what time he goes to bed. He has a reasonably good sleep routine. Is there anything we can do to help him sleep in later?
No, 6 o'clock is kind of our cut-off. And I said I had a 6 o'clocker. I didn't need an alarm clock, 6 o'clock every morning, and that is kind of okay. I think making sure that your blackout blinds are completely black out. We forget our landing lights sometimes and our hall lights. Light comes through the front door, through the landing. We don't think to black those out. So sometimes I suggest a blackout curtain on the outside of the child's door. White noise can help with environmental noises. So there might be things you can do to extend the darkness of and the environment of the room and the nightness of the room environment. Perhaps fairy lights on a timer to come on at 6:30 maybe, so that you go in at 6 and you say lights are off, it's sleep time, lights are off, it's sleep time, and at 6:30 it's morning. So maybe when they wake and night is still night and morning hasn't happened yet, that might help extend them. However, I would suggest that if he's up at 6 every morning, that his circadian rhythm set. So if you wanted more sleep, it might be that you have to extend it into the earlier evening. But be careful you don't run the risk of having him up at 5:30 instead of 6.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Helen. I've just got time for one more question.
Okay.
I'm struggling to get medication prescribed for my son who has similar comfort needs as the other question. He's 9 and wants to sleep next to me all the time. Pediatrician won't prescribe, as I mentioned that he can fall asleep okay, just wakes up several times seeking comfort. Are there any herbal remedies that you might suggest?
In terms of sleep, vitamin D is hugely important, iron is important, and magnesium is important. Please don't take supplements unless you know that they need them, but those are the 3 key elements that help with sleep. They won't prescribe melatonin if they're falling asleep and staying asleep, because melatonin just helps you fall asleep. What it doesn't do is keep you asleep. The night wakings will be due to associations, and that'll be why they won't prescribe, because from what you've described, they don't need melatonin. So looking at why they're waking, making sure that you reduce that reliance on you, like we discussed earlier, making sure their sensory needs are met and the bedroom environment is consistent, should help over time reduce those night wakings. So look at why they're waking. If you lie down with them when they go to sleep and they need you in the night, needing support, you're an association. So we just have to slowly reduce that need for you to be with them in order to drop off. Once you've got that, we wake at the top of every partial awakening, at every top of every sleep cycle. And if we need something back in place, that association, we're going to keep waking up. But when we wake up and we haven't got that need, we'll just transition into the next one because we don't need anything put back in place. So those night wakings will reduce as you reduce that need for you to go to sleep.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you, Helen. That's all we've got time for today. So thank you so much, Helen. There's so much great information and great questions answered there. And sorry that we couldn't get through all the questions. We had nearly 70 in the end. So
oh, wow.
Yeah, there's loads of great feedback. I'll send you that as well after the recording.